Hi, I'm Will Howard, and we're in the second busiest airport in the state of Maryland. You wouldn't guess that, but Easton Airport is the second busiest airport in the state of Maryland, just behind BWI. And we're up in the tower, and we're with Micah.
Micah, yeah, Micah Risher.
And you're going to tell us about some new equipment that you've gotten. But for those people that missed our last show last year, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how things operate here.
Sure, certainly. Like I said, my name is Micah Risher. I'm the air traffic manager here at Easton. I've been here since 2007. I know we did one show with you guys already, a general overview. So I'll recap some of that. Basically, the way we operate here, we have two control positions. The first I'll talk about is the ground controller, which is staffed today by Damien, and he's working ground control for us. And essentially what his responsibilities are is to take care of all the aircraft that are taxiing on the ground, any vehicle movement, mowing activity, any operation that's going to happen on the ground. And that's his area of responsibility. What you just heard, he just coordinated to cross the runway with the other controller over here. So he's actually...
What we've got is one airplane now getting ready to take off on 3-3.
One airplane sitting down there in the run-up area for runway 3-3.
And then we've got a jet over here waiting to cross that runway.
We have a citation that is holding short of runway 3-3 right now because we have an aircraft that's making an approach to runway 3-3. We have a Cessna 206, and if you look out there on about a mile final, I can see a speck on a mile final. He's about to land. And that's why I can see him. If you look out, he's actually probably getting ready to come up. He's certainly over the Mulberry development, about to cross over Bob Evans and Applebee's, and he's on his way over North Park here in a minute. He's certainly inside about a mile final. It's that trained controller eye.
You're right. I see him now. I got him. He's pretty high.
Yeah, he's about where he needs to be for the type of approach that he's making. And so that's why there's a lot of coordination that happens between the ground controller and the other controller that we haven't touched on yet is the local controller. The local controller, and this is the guy who is referred to as Easton Tower. This is the guy who he says cleared for takeoff, he says cleared to land. He controls all the aircraft that are operating in the airspace. And he's also responsible for the operations on the runways.
Northwest area, right downwind for runway 22, correction runway 33, report midfield right downwind. Okay, we're going to right downwind for 33.
And I'll kind of segue into the new equipment that we were going to talk about is our brand new STARS Light equipment here. That is, that's a fancy name for our new radar. The STARS stands for Standard Terminal Automated Replacement System.
Landing there.
Arrivals November 125.
That was the aircraft that just made the approach over, over the North Park area from the northwest. About 30 seconds ago, you heard an aircraft.
1533.
He's just touching down now.
What you hear happening right now is an aircraft just called ready to take off. Ryan here told him to hold short because they're going to cross a jet midfield, and he still has an aircraft that's exiting the runway down on the other end. Everything's very well orchestrated. It's a lot of coordination back and forth. I mean, obviously, for a control tower, safety is our largest concern. So we make sure that all the aircraft are as far apart as where they need to be, and one of the safest operations you can have.
30013, gust 21, clear for takeoff, safe direction.
See, so now you just heard the local controller clear that Cessna for takeoff. He also updated him on the wind information because it is a little windy and gusty today. So we gave him updated wind information and just cleared him for takeoff. At the same time, Damien over here, our ground controller, he's now taxiing in the Cessna that you just saw land. He's also taxiing this citation that's taxiing in. And at the same time, he's calling over to our radar approach control facility, and he's getting a flight plan on an aircraft that wants to depart here under IFR flight rules. So a lot happening at the same time, but it's very well orchestrated. The duties are separated, and that's how we get the job done. The radar here that we talked about earlier, About 2 minutes ago now, we had what was it, a Cessna, or no, it was Light Sport, called in from the northwest, probably inbound from Bay Bridge, and Ryan told him to enter the right downwind for runway 33. Now, we have not seen this guy yet. We've not been able to physically see him with our eyes yet, but I can tell you on the radar that that's that aircraft right there. And I knew that.
Now, what does the number mean? Is that his altitude?
Okay, that's exactly what that is. That 14 that you see is his altitude. He's just descended from 1,400 to 1,300. He's obviously on his way down to our pattern altitude, which is 1,100. And other things that can be displayed, that 11 that you see off to the right, that's actually a speed. That's 110 knots. And the 1,200 over top, being a VFR student pilot, you know, he's just squawking VFR. That's the 1,200 code. If he were to have a discrete code, it would show up. Like, I'll grab one of these guys over there. See, he has a discrete code of 6070. He's at flight level 180. He's going 440 knots. He is not coming to Easton.
No, he's flying over. Right?
he's flying over at 18,000 feet eastbound. It's probably an airliner joining up with the airway to go somewhere up to the northeast. That's more than likely what that is. We're able to filter out what we see on here. We look up to about 4,000 feet. We're looking at about 16 miles right now. So we're only concerned with the aircraft that are going to be landing at Easton. So these ones down here with the tags are the ones that are actually operating in Easton's airspace right now.
So these circles are what, 5 miles each?
We call these range rings, and they are 5 miles. Right? They're set at 5. Everything on the display is adjustable. We can adjust the range. We can move the range in and out. We can adjust the range rings in and out. We can set it up and the controllers have the discretion to set the display up how they feel comfortable. Some controllers like to look out, 10, 12 miles. Other controllers might want to look out 16 miles. Change the altitude filter up a little bit. It's really a controller preference type of thing.
You got a lot going on in the center 5.
Well, what's happening right here is actually that higher altitude one that we saw earlier. That's what it was. So although
that wasn't a close.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
Although the targets looked like they went right over top of each other, there was about 16,000 plus feet in between them. So.
Okay, this guy just disappeared. So.
He did, and just like with any radar system, the radar is located at the BWI airport. So the actual spinning radar is located in Baltimore. And every once in a while, when an aircraft is in a turn and the aircraft and the radar is spinning past him, he might drop them for a sweep. That's not uncommon. So sometimes your target strength may weaken or intensify depending on how. As you can see, it came back a lot stronger now that he's straight and level. It dropped him for just a second when he was in the turn. Same thing here. It dropped him, and it's actually dropping him for another reason, and it's because he's going below the altitude of radar coverage.
So he's 700 feet.
700 feet.
Point him out.
Okay. He's actually turning final for runway 33 right now. And if you look out on final, you see him there at about a half mile. He's coming over North Park right now. So he's actually fallen, as you can see now, he's fallen off the radar. He's no longer there, but we can see him clearly with our eyes. And that's the real benefit for us.
I got it.
So you get an airplane, let's say you're out flying, Will, and you tell us that you're 10 miles to the west. Well, very hard for a human being to look out 10 miles and see you, but we can go out there and if we see a target that's 10 miles to the west, if you tell us you're 10 miles to the west at 2,200 feet, inbound for landing, and we look out there and there's one guy out there that meets that criteria, we are reasonably assured that that's you. Then what we'll do is we'll assign a pattern entry that makes sense from your position, and then we'll watch you track in. If you track in and enter the downwind like we told you to, well, then we know that's you. And then we look out and acquire you visually, and just like we just did with that situation. A couple other things. I don't know how much you can see, but you see a couple different things here. You see a blue block, then you see a green line. The blue block, like I said earlier, that's what we call primary radar. That's the radar actually painting the skin of the aircraft. The green line is what we call secondary radar, and that is the radar interrogating the transponder. That's basically the radio in the aircraft. So the radar is looking for two things. It's looking for one, physical, the physical fuselage of the aircraft, and it's scanning for the radio. So we call that the beacon slash as well. So we have primary and secondary on most of these. Now, if you look up here to the north, there's a target up there that's just blue. He doesn't have his transponder turned on. Probably a VFR guy going into, this is Bay Bridge Airport, this little circle up here. Probably a VFR guy going into Bay Bridge or whatnot. He's not squawking anything, doesn't have his transponder turned on.
And VFR, for those people that don't know, is?
Visual flight rules.
Right.
Two types of flight rules that are operated. We have visual flight rules and instrument flight rules. The majority of what we do here at Easton and the majority of our customers are what we call VFR aircraft. It's basically, they can operate, once we tell them that they're cleared for takeoff and they depart our airspace, which is a 4-mile radius up to 2,600 feet, they're able to do what they want to do. They don't have to talk to air traffic unless they're in designated airspace where two-way radio communication is required. As long as they don't go lower than 500 feet over rural areas, they can do what they want. They don't have to talk to anybody. They can basically fly, see and avoid, see and be seen, and avoid other airplanes. Then we have instrument flight rules, which if you go to Baltimore and you catch a flight anywhere, that's what you're flying under, instrument flight rules. And air traffic control is handling you from the very minute you taxi out to the minute you land on the other end. So when Damien called over a minute ago to get a flight plan, that's what he was doing. And I'll just give you an example. There's a Falcon jet, looks like he's going to go down to Salisbury, probably some maintenance run or something like that. And so we called over to the radar approach control facility and they gave us a flight plan on this aircraft. So we know his call sign, we know that he's a Falcon jet, and he's going to Salisbury. He's going to get radar vectors all the way to Salisbury. When he leaves here, we know that he's going to fly heading 350. He's going to maintain 2,000 feet. He's going to get up to 5,000 feet on his way there. And we know what his discrete code is going to be, 0054. Now that 0054 code is what you would see on the radar.
So that number is assigned to him. So
that number is a discrete number assigned to him. So when he leaves here, he'll be under positive control the entire time. So he'll be taxied out by our ground controller. He'll get out to the runway. He'll be told that he's cleared for takeoff by our local controller. He'll be given to the Potomac TRACON on this 350 heading, climbing to 2,000 feet. Potomac will get him up. They will radar contact him. They will turn him towards Salisbury. They will hand him off to Patuxent approach, which is just south of us. Patuxent will get them vectored towards Salisbury. Then they'll call Salisbury Tower and they'll tell Salisbury, hey, I got an inbound, a Falcon jet, he's 10 minutes out. And then they'll hand him off to Salisbury Tower and the process will be repeated on the other end. They'll bring him in. Salisbury's local controller will talk to him, land him. Salisbury will give him to their ground controller and taxi him in. He'll be under positive air traffic control the entire way of the flight.
And this is why in an airplane cockpit you have 4 radios. So you can constantly, your next radio is already preset.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're always, when you get in, you're listening to the ATIS, you're doing your pre-flight, then you go up ground control, you get out, up local control. You always have your approach control, dialed in, ready to go. The tower you're going to go to in the other end. But yeah, a lot of frequency changes and a lot of links in the chain, for sure.
Tell us a little bit about the airport itself. I know that this airport was started back in the 40s.
Right.
Bill Noonan founded. It's the highest point in Easton with our height here is what?
72?
72 feet above sea level.
Yep, 72 mean sea level, highest point in Talbot County. We refer to ourselves as Mount Easton sometimes, just jokingly.
I know that when I drive down Glebe Road in the evening or at dusk, I can look over here and see your lights.
Right.
Because you're about 50 feet above
That's
Glebe
correct.
Road.
That is correct. And actually, there's actually quite a difference here on the airport. The highest point is 72 at the north end, but we're down to like 30 or 32 down here on the south end. So right? There's that much of a gain just going up from the southwest to the northeast. But for those of you, who don't know, we do have runway 4 and 22 is our larger runway. That's our primary runway.
Now the 22 means 220 degrees.
220
right?
degrees, exactly. So when you're in your aircraft operating on runway 22, whether departing or landing, your compass should say 220.
Okay.
That means you're physically pointing down to the southwest. When you're on runway 4, which goes this way, you're pointed up to the northeast.
So you add 10.
That is correct.
Or 20. No, yeah, 10. So 40 degrees.
Exactly. And it is that is a magnetic heading. It's not aligned to true north. It's a magnetic heading. Yeah, they have to apply a magnetic variation to that.
So if somebody wants to fly to the north and the winds are cooperative, then they would take off from 33 to go 330 degrees.
Right.
Because 360 degrees is about that way.
That's exactly right. And what we do is we use the runway that's most nearly aligned with the wind when it's 5 knots or more. Anything less than 5 knots, we try to use runway 4, because runway 4 is the runway it has the best uphill gradient, so it's better for jets landing on runway 4. It's the best aircraft, or it's the best runway to land on because of the uphill gradient. It also has the ILS, the instrument landing system, for bad weather. Aircraft can operate in and out of here, ceilings as low as 200 feet. So that's another reason why runway 4 is preferable. And then we have runway 22. Obviously goes the other way. Now there's not an ILS on 22, but there is a GPS approach. But 422 is definitely our primary runway. The other runway we have is runway 15 and 33, which is the 4,000 foot runway. It's a little bit smaller. It's not used as much. We're actually using it now, runway 33, because of the wind being so nearly aligned to 33.
Let's take a close look at the wind gauge here.
We got about 290 at 10, so nearly 300 degrees is what the wind's blowing. But with these gusts over here is what do it for you. We have gusts that are going up to 18 to 20 knots. So nobody, unless you're in a large aircraft, which you've seen here, a couple of the larger jets, while we've been talking, have actually been operating on 2.2. They've been using 2.2 because the jets are more stable. They can obviously take the wind, but more importantly, they need the longer runway. Now the smaller aircraft, they can't take the wind. So they definitely need to go out and be more aligned with the wind.
By wind, we're talking about crosswinds.
Exactly, the crosswind.
So when a small plane is landing and there's a 20-knot wind beside it,
that's right.
It's going to blow
the plane's coming in like this, right?
So it's got to crab its way in.
That's exactly right.
Its way in. If it hits its tire hits like that, then
sure,
it can damage the airplane.
It's not preferable at all. The smaller aircraft, your Category 1 aircraft, some Category 2 aircraft, they like to be on the runway that's most nearly aligned with the wind.
Now, 2.2, the one that is going in that direction, if we can swing our camera that way, we can see from all the way down there that this is 2.2 pointing 220 degrees, pointing right at Easton.
Correct.
And that's probably one of the reasons why you want to use 4, because you don't want traffic flying over Easton.
And it actually, if you take off runway 22 and go straight out, you actually remain just to the west of the bypass. If you've ever been over at Lowe's there, coming out of Lowe's on Saturday morning, you can look over and you see the planes. They're always just west of the bypass.
But what we're seeing there now is the old Black & Decker building, and that's a good way off, and that's the subject of the county council deciding whether to extend that or not. Right. Just wanted to point that out.
Okay, well, one of the capabilities of our radar system, and one of the things that I went to the airport management with and told them that would be a tool that we could use, is in the event of emergency situation. If we had an emergency situation, it's much easier to identify an aircraft. Even if you were out here and you were having a communication failure or you had something like that, we can get a much more positive position on exactly where you are and help you get to the airport. You and I were talking earlier about an instance where you were flying in to another airport.
I was flying from a night flight from Easton to Wilmington.
Right.
And there was such a mass of lights over Wilmington, I couldn't see the tower.
Right.
The beacon. So I called the tower and asked them to turn up their runway lights. And they said the runway lights were already up.
Right.
So fortunately, because they had radar, they said, "Is that you?" I was 28 Juliet was my call sign.
Right.
And they said, "Is that you, 28 Juliet, at 2,300 feet going 040?" And I said, "Yes, that's me." He said, "Turn 070, you fly right over the airport."
Right.
So I turned 070, and sure enough, the airport was right below.
Right, exactly. And that's exactly a situation that we would be able to use to help aid pilots. And in the most extreme scenarios, which we hope we never have to use, some of the maps that we got made, we were able to. Here's our coastline overlay. Yeah. So that's something I wanted to show you. And that's good for geographical reference, and you could turn it on to know where things are. And we also have our roads put on there.
Oh, cool.
And two of the reasons that we did that, and obviously I've been doing this for 17 years, and I've been involved with a lot of different incidents and a few accidents over the years as a radar controller. If you were to have an aircraft have to make an emergency landing in a field or something like that, which did happen in Talbot County about a little over a year ago. They had that Cherokee crash in the soybean field over off Matthewstown Road. Well, if we were tracking you, we would be able to we'd be able to get a GPS location off of the last time we talked to you. But we can also bring this up, and if you were down here, I mean, we would know if you're in Caroline County or Talbot County. If you're in Dorchester County or Talbot County, we would know which 911 to call. We would know that you're all, that you're off of Route 328, or something like that. We would know. We could bring this up and say, okay, well, they're out there in the vicinity of St. Michael's or Tillman or Oxford or Trapp. This gives us a better. We can pull information off this. That way, when we call 911 over to the Talbot County Emergency Management folks, we can let them know, say, hey, we have a feeling that this aircraft is in the vicinity of, he's just off St. Michael's Road in the area of St. Michael's. And sometimes when when you have a real-time emergency situation, that's very helpful to be able to pull that type of information and relay it to the first responders.
Will this equipment warn you if two planes are getting close together?
This equipment has the capability to warn you if two planes are getting together. We do not automatically have that enabled because we're not a full service radar approach control facility like Potomac or Patuxent or one of these big radar facilities, and we really don't have the need for all that, because if you remember from what we were just looking at, the few planes operating in and out of here, it's very easy for us to determine who's our airplanes and who's not our airplanes, and to make traffic advisories. Now, having this radar certainly helps us give traffic advisories. In the past, when we had a plane depart here and go westbound and we had somebody inbound from the west, well, the best we could do was just make a blanket call saying, hey, there's traffic in your area or something like that. Now we'll actually see both of the targets on there, and we can give a traffic advisory which is much more detailed. We can give you traffic 12 o'clock, 3 miles, eastbound, altitude indicates 1,500 or whatever, and we can give you much more detailed traffic advisory.
Back from that pilot that he's actually seen that other plane.
Oh, exactly. We'll continue to give traffic advisories. So as you can see here, just like I just did, I took the geo overlay off and I took the roads off. See, so now you don't know where these geographical areas are. But if you're tracking a guy, like say that 2,900 foot guy down there, and he were to have an issue, well, now you can pull it up and know, okay, well, he's in Trapp. I know that, just by bringing that up. And I can tell you that he's on the west side of Route 50.
That's Choptank River.
That's the Choptank River. So he's probably really coming up on the city of Trapp, heading towards Oxford, because there's Oxford Road. So you can get a lot of information out.
Sure can.
And when we call 911, we can give them that information.
Well, that's fortunate that you've got this, and it's called a Raytheon STAR system?
It is a STAR, Standard Terminal Automation Replacement System. Okay. And one more, this was actually the first STARS system that was put in a civilian airport control tower. It's been used in military airports, so we're the first one. Now, other civilian towers are going to get it as well, but this is actually the first one, and the software that it's running is the latest and greatest software version, and we're actually a test site. So when the FAA technical operations folks want to test something out on the software, they'll come here from Atlantic City and they'll try it here first. So we'll get to see the new stuff before anybody else.
Easton surely is state of the art.
Easton is leading the way once again.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Will.
Sure appreciate it.
Nice seeing you.
We're here with Councilman Corey Pack. Now, Corey, you just had a tour of the tower.
Yes.
And you've had a chance to look around. I know that you had called for an investigation on whether we should extend the runway or not. How are your thoughts on that now?
Well, I think the investigation's come along quite well. One of the things I did not want to do was go out and spend any more additional taxpayer money, whether it be federal money or state or local money, for the investigation. I think we have enough brain thrust here in Talbot County to get the right people around the table and discuss this thing out a little bit more thoroughly.
Yeah, $30,000 investigation sounds like 16 months to me.
Yes, and it's although we're not under any time constraint as far as coming to any decision today or tomorrow, but you still want to make sure you vet out every opportunity so that you can keep your employment base stable here in Talbot County, but also keep your airport as a viable entity, also an economic engine here in Talbot County. So
these are jobs, right?
These are jobs, and we're here right now in the hangar of Air Repair, which is part of East Coast Air. and they've been here, I think, since the early 70s. So these are jobs, these are actually people who pay mortgages, who eat at our restaurants and shop in our supermarkets, and so we want to make sure we maintain their way of living here also in Talbot County.
What else have you done to investigate this?
Well, we've talked with the FAA. We looked at what is required for the instrument landing system as far as the length of the runway. As Mr. Terry Page clearly stated on Tuesday, this is a local decision. It is our airport. But of course, they have a vested interest as well in this airport. They have put forth a lot of federal dollars at the Eastern Airport. So we want to also include them in the discussion as well. I've also talked to many of the owners and the operators here at the airfield and got their input as well as far as the state of their economy, how they see the runway extension adding to their business in the future. So I got a different take from the federal side, from the local side. And I also talked with Mike Henry, looking at the master plan of the Eastern Airport, and if there was another way to extend the runway without including the Black & Decker building, what would we need to do to incorporate that into the master plan.
And what did he say about that?
Well, there is a possibility of doing that. We're looking at that very, very closely. I met with Mike Henry today for lunch. Also with John Craig, the county manager. We had a meeting today. I thought the meeting was very productive. I think we're taking some steps to bring another option to the public. I don't want to say too much about it right now, but I do believe that, again, the conversation was very productive and we are headed in the right direction.
Have you actually spent time with the people who are going to lose their house?
I have, actually. I went out last weekend and I met with Ms. Singh. She's not one of the homeowners that are slated to lose her home, but she is right there in the Hazelwood area. Went in and spoke with Mr. and Mrs. Apple. My wife and I met with them in their living room and had a very productive conversation with them, very insightful conversation. And it meant a lot to me as a council person, but also just as a resident, to sit across from this couple who have been there since the early 70s. They've been in their home, I think, some 34 years, I believe, in that home. That's the home they want to retire in. That's the home they raised all their children in. That's the home they raised their grandchildren in. And we found out that they lost one of their grandchildren last year due to a very horrible incident. So,
can they move their house? I've heard of people moving houses.
Well, physically, yes, you can, I guess, cut the house away from its foundation and move it. But why would we want to ask the citizen to do that?
Yeah, if it had to be.
There are certain options that you lay out, and there's certain options what they call a nuclear option. If you have no other way of doing something, that's the last possible option. I don't think we're at that stage right now, Will. I think there are other options out there that would allow those homeowners to stay where they are, that will allow the tenants there at Global, both Maverick and Global Industries, to stay where they are, and to keep this airport, which has been here since 1943,
and
still extend the runway, and keep companies like Eastern Air Repair, like East Coast Air, and keep these companies viable and employing people. Again, like we said earlier, people who are paying a mortgage themselves, people who are buying food and putting food on the table. These are citizens, and so we want to, as I said earlier on last week, have our cake and eat it too. We want to be able to keep the Eastern Airport viable going into the future. We want to keep the jobs that we have, the 160 jobs there at Global, the 15 or so jobs at Maverick. We want to keep those companies, keep those employers here in Talbot County, and also keep the homeowners stable where they are.
Sounds like you saved us $30,000.
Well, I hope to save us some more than that down the road. But, if you get the right people around the table and you want to have discussion, and the key that I always said about my campaign was I was willing to listen. And you get enough people around the table who know the business, and you let them talk to you, and you ask questions of them, you'll come up with solutions.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Will.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.